Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Praptasya Kalyana Gunana Vasya Vande Guru Shri Charana Ravindam Praptasya Kalyana Gunana Vasya Vande Guru Shri Charana Ravindam 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 Mahaprabhu Kirtanadita Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasurasena Mahaprabhu Kirtanadita Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasurasena Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charana Ravindam Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charana Shri Vigrahara Dhana Nityanana Shingaratanama Diramarjanado Shri Vigrahara Dhana Nityanana Shingaratanama Juktasya Bhaktamsa Niyonjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charana Ravindam Vande Guru Shri Charana Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satana Triptan Hari Bhakta Shangham Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satana Triptan Hari Bhakta Shangham Kritaiva Tripte Bhajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charana Ravindam Bhajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Shiradhikama Dhavayarapara Madhura Lila Gunarupa Namna Shradhikama Dhavayarapara Madhura Lila Pratikshana Swa Danalarupasya Vande Guru Shri Charana Ravindam Pratikshana Swa Danalarupasya Vande Guru Shri Charana Ravindam Ne Kunjayono Ratikeri Siddhyai Jayali Vir Jukti Apekshaneya Ne Kunjayo Jayali Vir Jukti Apekshaneya Tatrati daksha ativalabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Tatrati daksha ativalabhasya Vande Guru Shri Sakchadharitvaina Shamastashashri Uktastatha bhav Vyataiva sarvi Sakchadharitvaina Shamastashashri Kintu prabhorja priya eva tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Kintu prabhoja priya eva tasya Yasya prasada Bhagavat prasada Yasya prasada Nagati kutapi Yasya prasada Bhagavat prasada Yasya prasada Nagati kutapi Dayam stuvam stasya Yashastin sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Dhyayam stuvam stasya Yashastin sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Dhyayam stuvam tasya Yashastin sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Dhyayam stuvam tasya Yashastin sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachattari Shatarine Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachattari Shatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Nityananda Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Bol. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Nama Krishna Jadavaya Namo Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namo Gopal Govindaram Srimadhusudam Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Jai Sita Maharani Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghuna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Shri Radha Nila Madhav Radha Nila Madhav Radhe Jayo Jagannath Jayo Baladeva Jayo Subhadrama Jayo Sudarshan Chakra Jaya Sitaram Jayo Lakshman Hanuman Nitai Gaura Haribo Haribo Nitai Gaur Haribo Haribo Nitai Gaura Pramanandi Haribo Jaya Vishnupada Paramansa Parvajakacha Stottara Sarasishimad ISKCON Pratishta Viviti Samstapakachar Vaishnav Ceremony Gaura Prijana Krishna Prema Bhakti Datta Patita Pavana His Divine Grace Abhay Charamina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ji Ki Jai Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patiti Udhari Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai Jayananta Koti Vaishnava Vrindi Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Se Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai Jai Param Dayal Se Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai Jai Pramanama Sankirtaneka Janaka Prema Purushottama Shri Sachinandaneshman Gauranga Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari Mahavranavatar Ki Jai Golokera Pramadhan Harinam Sankirtan Jai Ki Jai Juga Dharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai Brihad Nidanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopupna Radha Kund Syamakund Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Brajabhum Vrindavan Mathurudam Ki Jai The Lordship Shri Radha Nilmadhav Ki Jai Shri Maya Purnavadip Eka Chakradham Ki Jai Parama Karuna Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai Shri Purushottam Ketra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Shri Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Smas Bhadradevi Sudarshan Chakra Bhagavan Ki Jai Bhakti Sarva Vigna Vinashana Kanushingare Bhagavan Ki Jai Jaganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Vrindi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Bolo Shri Mathura Dharani Ki Jai Shamaveta Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai Nitai Gaurari Pramanande. All glory to the assembled bodies. All glory to the assembled bodies. All glory to the assembled bodies. All glories. All glories to Shri Shri Guru Shri Gaurang. Namaste Narasingaya Namaste Narasingaya Pralada Lada Aine Pralada Lada Aine Hiranyakasipu Bhaksha Hiranyakasipu Bhaksha Silatangkana kalaye Jaya Silatangkana kalaye Ito nishingo Parato nishingo Ito nishingo, parato nishingo. Jato jato jamitato nishingo. Bayi nishingo, hrudaye nishingo. Bayi nishingo, hrudaye nishingo. Narashinga madhime sharanam prapade. Tabakara kamala bade nakam Adabhuta Shinga Dalita Hiranyakasipu Tanabringa Kesavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re जय जगदीश रे तब कर कमल बरे नाका अद्भुत सिंह दलित हिरण्यकशिपु तनवृंग केशवदित नरहरि रूप जय जगदीश रे जय जगदीश रे केशवद्रुत नरहरि रूप जय जगदीश रे जय जगदीश रे जय जगदीश रे केशवद्रुत नरहरि रूप जय जगदीश रे जय जगदीश रे जय जगदीश रे जय निसिंह रे जय निसिंह रे निसिंह रे जय निसिंह रे जय नरहरि जय नरहरि नरहरि जय नरहरि जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय भक्त प्रहलाद प्रहलाद मरा भक्त प्रहलाद जय प्रहलाद मरा निताय गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल जय श्री भक्ति पथ सर्वविघ्न विनाशनाकनि सिंह रे भगवान की जय जय भक्त श्रेष्ठ प्रहलाद महाराज की जय निताय गौर हरि प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल श्री वृंदाई तुलसी बाई प्रिय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी शतवताय नमो नमः वृंदाई तुलसी बाई प्रिय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी शतवताय नमो नमः वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रिय केशव सत्य कृष्ण भक्ति प्रदे देवी शतवताय नमो नमः जय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की
Krishna
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha.
Namo Namaha. Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha.
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha.
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Abhilashi.
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 Jeto Mara Sharanalo Tara Vancha Purana Ho.
Jetumara Sharanala Taravancha Purna.
Kripa Kori Koro Tare Vrindavan Vasi.
Tumi kripa kori korotare Vrindavanavasi.
Morae Abhilash Vilas Kunje Diyo Vas.
Moraiya Vilas Kunje Diyava.
Nayane Haribo Sada Jugal Ruparasi.
Aminayane Haribo Sada Jogalaruparasi.
Eini Vedana Dharo Sakiranugata Koro.
Eini Vedanadhara Sakirayanu Gatakara.
Seva Adhikara Diye Koro Nijadasi.
Sevayadhikarariye Karani Jadasi.
Dina Krishna Dase Koe Namora Hoe.
Dina Krishna Dase Koi Namora.
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Yena Bhasi.
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadayena Vasi.
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Yena Bhasi.
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadayena Vasi.
Yani Kani Cha Papani Brahma Hatyadikani Cha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradakshina Pade Pade.
Yani Kani Sapapani Brahma Hatyadikani Cha Tani Tani Pranasanti Pradakshina Pade Pade.
Yani Kani Cha Papani Brahma Hatyadikani Cha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradakshina Pade Pade.
Jani Kani Sapapani Brahma Hatyadikani Cha तनितानि प्रनशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani
Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani
Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi
Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi
Nityai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nityai Gaura Hari Bol
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol
श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की जय
Shri Vrindayai Tulasi Devi Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavatai Namo Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Devi Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavatai Namo Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Devyai Priyayai Kesava Satya Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namo Namaha Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you as wishes fulfilled, bestowing your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also grant me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower with the aims of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant Krishna praise. May I always fame in love with Shri Radha and Govinda. Srimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shikhastakam Ki Jai. Chaitodarpanamanjanam Bhavamada Bhagninivapanam Shri Akari Vachandika Vitaranam Vidya Madhu Jivanam Anandam Vivakhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatmasnam Param Paramijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Baudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrarpita Niyamita Smarane Nakala Itadrishitava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamati Durhaivam Iti Samyajai Nanuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tararapi Saishnana Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadari Na dhanam na janam na sundarim Kavitamba jagarishaka maye Mama janmani janmanishwari Bhavatar bhakti rahituki tvai Ainandatanu jakinkaram Patitamam vishame bhavam budhu Kripaya tava pada pankaja Stita dhuli sadrisham vichintaya Nayanam galora shrudharaya Vadanam gadugadarudhaya gira Pulakairinchitam bapukada Tavanama grahane bhavishyati Jugayitam nimishena Shakshusha pravushayitam Sunyayitam jagata sarvam Govinda virahena me Asli Shabhapadaratam pinashtumam Adarshanan marmahatam karotuva Jatha tathava vidadhatu lampatu Mat pranathastu saivana paro Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam Ki Jai Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaurati Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pasatyari Satarine. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years, and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtana movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we always are anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names, O my Lord. Out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in humble state of mind, thinking oneself a lord on strolling the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your casual devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, or will my eyes will be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? Or will my voice choke up I will the hairs of my body stand on the end of the recitation of your name. O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world of your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and it shall remain so, even if handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu secures the Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider the names of demigods, our Lord Shiva and Lord Brahman, to be equal to or independent of the non-Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic scriptures or scriptures in pursuance of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to the imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. Is to commit sinful activities on strength of chanting the holy name. 8. To consider the chanting Hare Krishna one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are often Vedas as fruitive activities, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisance unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just our desire trees, they can fulfill the desires of everyone.
And they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripasindubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Vaishnava Thakur ki jai. Namo Swadestai Bhuti Smat Bhaktina Swanta. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Picharani Visesa Sunyavani Paskati. Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai. O Aganya Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manubhistam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Jataha Pachikamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Ragunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Nivitam Sa Daya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Pastkatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutali Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Namine Sri Vasavani Videvi Daitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vigyana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktita Shri Guru Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namastate Namaste Guruvani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Apasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Guru Kishoraya Saksadvaira Yamurtaye Vipalambara Sambodhe Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitananda Namine Guru Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gauravir Baba Bhumestvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Sri Jagannatayate Namaha Vanshakalpa Durabhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Guritsuse Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhakta Saktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Suratur Pangur Mama Manda Mate Gati Matsarva Swapadam Bujo Radha Madana Mohana Divyadvindaranya Kalpradumadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simasanastito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prastali Bihi Sevyamana Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasa Rambivam Sivata Tatastita Karsan Venuswaner Gobir Gobinatakstriyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasti Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Nadi Radha Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chantamani Prakarasat Masakalpa Vriksha Laksha Vrite Susurabira Paliantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambhrama Sevyamanam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Kananda Adavenda Dalaytaksham Bharhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandarpa Kotikamaniya Vishesha Sobham Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandrakala Sadvanamadya Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranay Keli Kalabalasam Shyamam Tribangalalita Nita Prakasam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Pantika Yanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadvijvala Vigrahasya Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaita Machuta Manadi Mananta Rupa Madhyam Purana Purisham Naviyovanam Cha Vede Sadurlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Satavatsada Sampragam Yovayo Ratapi Manasomani Bungamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tatve Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chaitam Jagadanda Kotim Yes Chakti Rasti Jagadanda Chaya Yadanta Adanta Rasta Paramanu Chayanta Rastam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Deo Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Manima Sanara Bhusa Suktarya Meva Ginduma Patitai Stubanti Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Patibhavita Vistabir Yevani Chirupa Tayakalabi Goloka Evani Visata Kilatma Bhuto Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksa Deva Hidaya Suvilokayante Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Guna Swarupam Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menatista Nanavatara Makarod Bhuvanesakintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumam Yo Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhuto Jagananda Koti Kosi Srasesa Vasadadi Vibhuti Benam Tad Brahman Niskalam Anantam Sesa Bhutam Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Mayahi Yasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Trigunya Tad Visaya Veda Vitaya Manam Sadvavalambi Parasatvam Visuddha Satvam Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasuya Brani Nampati Phulam Smaratamu Petya Lilaya Tena Bhuvanani Jaya Jasram Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nichidamni Tare Chatasya Devi Maheswari Dhamma Sate Satesha Tete Prabhavi Nichaya Vitashtayena Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Sastistati Pralaya Sadhava Sakti Reka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga Ityana Rupam Abhyasya Chitestatesa Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Dali Vikara Visesi Yoga Sanjayate Nahita Tapritakaste Eta Yasambhutama Bhitata Samapaitikariat Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Departure David Dasantanam Abhipetya Dipayate Vitetu Samanudharma Yastaja Gevi Hitcha Vishnu Tayavibhati Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Am Kram Karanam Jali Vajitisma Yoga Nidramananta Jagadanda Saruma Kuba Adhara Saktim Avalambya Param Smurtim Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaikan Isvasita Kalamatavalambya Shivanti Loma Villaja Jagadanda Nata Vishnu Mahansa Yasya Kalavi Seso Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Basmanya Tasma Sakaleshan Jesu Teja Swiyam Kiyat Pakatiyat Apitadvadatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidana Karta Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palavi Gombinidaya Kumbhadwan De Pranam Samayesa Ganadi Raja Vignam Nihantam Alamasya Jagatayasya Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahi Gaganamambu Marudi Sasya Kala Statatmuna Nasiti Jagatayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vivanti Visanti Amcha Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschak Suresa Savita Sakilagrahana Raja Samasta Suramurti Sesa Teja Yasya Gaya Brahmati Sambrita Kalachakro Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Dharmo Tabapa Nichaya Sutastabamsi Brahmadi Kita Patakava Dehastajivaha Yadata Mata Vibhava Prakatapa Baba Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Yastrinda Gopa Matavenda Mahuswa Karma Bandhan Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nidahati Kinchicha Bhakti Bhaja Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Yam Kroda Kama Saja Pranyadi Bete Vatsalya Moho Goragor Vasevya Bhava Sanchintya Tasha Sadrisam Tanamapurete Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bajami Shriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kaputarava Jumabu Mishtinta Maniganama Yitoyam Amritam Kataganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriyasaki Chiranandam Jyoti Parama Pitada Swadhyam Apichasa Yatra Shiradi Bhisravati Shirabi Vyasya Sumahani Mesa Adakyo Vava Jitina Yatra Prisamaya Bhajesvita Dvipam Tamaham Ila Golakam Ityam Vedanta Ste Santaksiti Viracharaka Shri Guru Vastika Paris Ki Jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on the forest right to extinguish it. So the spiritual master delivers the materially with world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence out from a respectful basin of the lotus feet is such spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious qualities, chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing, playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion with his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves off my respectful basin of the lotus feet. Such a spiritual master. Spiritual master is always engaged in temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I, from my respectful basin of the lotus feet, is such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is leaked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasad, he is satisfied. I, from my respectful basin of the lotus feet, is such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conscious compassion of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I, from my respectful basin of the lotus feet, is such spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting gopis who at different times make different personal arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. I, from my most humble basin of the lotus feet, is such spiritual master. The spiritual master, to be honest, is the supreme Lord because he's the most confidential servant to the Lord. As he's acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I, from my respectful basin of the lotus feet, is such spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, I receive benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful basin of the lotus feet of my spiritual master, his divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shrimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shrimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, Text 26. Kala Vritya Tumayayam Gunamayam Ahoksaja Purusenatma Bhutena Viryam Adatta Viryavan. Kala, the eternal time. Vritya, by the influence of. 2, but Mayayam, in the external energy. Gunamayam, in the qualitative modes of nature. Ahoksaja, the transcendence. Purushena, by the Purusha incarnation. Atmabhutena, who is the plenary expansion of the Lord. Viryam, the seeds of the living entities. Adata, impregnated. Viryavan, the supreme living being. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The supreme living being, in his feature as the transcendental Purusha incarnation, who is the Lord's plenary expansion, impregnates the material nature of 3 modes, and thus, by the influence of eternal time, the living entities appear. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The offspring of any living being is born after the father impregnates the mother with semen, and the living entity, floating in the semen of the father, takes the shape of the mother's form. Similarly, mother material nature cannot produce any living entity from her material elements unless and until she is impregnated with the living entities by the Lord himself. That is the mystery of the generation of the living entities. This impregnating process is performed by the first Purusha incarnation, Karanarnavasai Vishnu. Simply by his glance over material nature, the whole matter is accomplished. We should not understand the process of impregnation by the personality Godhead in terms of our conception of sex. The omnipotent Lord can impregnate just by his eyes, and therefore he is called all-potent. Each and every part of his transcendental body can perform each and every function of the other parts. This is confirmed in the Brahma Simprati 5.32, Angani yasya sakalendriya vrittimanti pasyanti pantikalyanti chiram jaganti ananda jinmaya sadujvala vigrahasya govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami. 14 and that's Brahma Samhita 5.32. In Bhagavad Gita 14.3, also the same principle is confirmed. Mama yonir mahad brahma tasmin garbam dadam yaham. When the cosmic creation is manifested, the living entities are directly supplied from the Lord. They are never products of material nature. Thus, no scientific advancement of material science can ever produce a living being. That is the whole mystery of the material creation. The living entities are foreign to matter, and thus they cannot be happy unless they are situated in the same spiritual life as the Lord. The mistaken living being, out of forgetfulness of his original condition of life, unnecessarily wastes time trying to become happy in the material world. The whole Vedic process is to remind one of this essential feature of life. The Lord offers the conditioned soul a material body for his so-called enjoyment, but if one does not come to his senses and enter into the spiritual consciousness, the Lord again puts him in the unmanifested condition as it existed in the beginning of the creation. The Lord is described here as Viryavan, or the greatest potent or powerful being, because he impregnates material nature with innumerable living entities who are conditioned from time immemorial. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Supreme Living Being, in his feature as the Transcendental Purusha incarnation, who is the Lord's plenary expansion, impregnates the material nature of three modes, and thus, by the influence of eternal time, the living entities appear. Gaura Premanandi Haribol. So this is, of course, a very important verse. It's explaining how the material world is populated with living entities. The living entities are not a product of material nature. They are of the spiritual nature. And that's explained in Bhagavad Gita 9.4 and 9.5. 9.4 explains the material nature. Bhumirapo nalo vayu kam mano buddhirevacha hankara ityam me bina pakritirastada. Krishna says this inferior spiritual energy of mind. So when it says inferior spiritual energy, it is spiritual. Material nature is spiritual, but it's an inferior spiritual energy. That means that there's a superior spiritual energy. So first of all, he says earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. These are my 8 inferior spiritual energies, and he calls them separated. Now, what does that mean, separated? Well, an example of separated is the following. Let's say you speak into a dictaphone, and then after some time you die, and your relatives play the dictaphone message that you gave before you died. So it's your voice that's speaking and in the recording, but you are separated from it. So that's what Krishna is talking about. These are my separated material energies. Just like the energy of the person speaking is recorded on the recorder, And even after the person is dead, you're hearing the voice of the person speak. But he's separated from the body. The message is separated from the body. It's the message of the person, but it's separated now because the body has died, but the message is still recorded. So the material nature, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego, and the living entities that are impregnated into it by Mahavishnu in a plenary expansion of Krishna, the material energy is separated from the Lord, and the living entities seem to be separated from the Lord. They can never really be separated, but it seems like it because they've forgotten the Lord. So that's the second way of being separated, through forgetfulness. Now, although the living entity cannot be separated from the Lord because the living entity is part and parcel, but they can forget it. Just like, let's say, there's a teenager and he has a big argument with his father and mother, and he walks out of the house, and he keeps going. He doesn't come back. And the parents, of course, are upset, and he's upset. So he stays away for 30 years. Right? So, but after 30 years, he decides to come back to the parents. So for 30 years, they heard nothing from him. But now he comes back. And it's like the parable of the father who had two sons. One son always stayed with the father. The other son left and took up a bad life, engaging in all kinds of nonsense activities. But after some years, he came back again, and the father accepted him. And the son that always was faithful and never left the father, he said, what's going on here? This guy left, but he came back, and you're honoring him and you're accepting him as if nothing happened. So, yes. Why? Because the father never forgot the son. The son forgot the father never forgot the son. The same way, Krishna never forgets us. We forget him, but he doesn't forget us. So when we want to turn back to him, he receives us with all, let's say, respect, and he's very happy, because we can never be really separated from Krishna, because we are by nature, our constitution is to be part and parcel of the Lord. That's an eternal thing. Jivera Swarupahaya Nityara Krishna Das. What is the real position of the living entity? He's the eternal servant of Krishna. But we can forget it. And that is an artificial state of existence, just like a fish out of water. That's an artificial existence. The fish cannot really exist out of the water for long. It will die. So in the same reason, why do we experience death? Because we forget Krishna. And therefore we have to undergo 4 unnecessary things: birth, old age, disease, and death. These things are not part of the soul. Our soul is eternal. It's never born and never dies. But we're put into a material body that is material, and therefore it's subject to birth, death, old age, and disease. And by ignorance, we identify with the body. And many people help us, like our own family helps us, the schooling helps us, movies helps us, propaganda helps us think that I am this body. Just like, Black Lives Matter, or like the Nazis, only white people with blue eyes and blonde hair matter. So all that racism and ethnicity and nationalism and internationalism, it's all based on wrongly identifying ourselves with the body. And that is the source of the false ego. One race thinks they're better than another race, or one nationality thinks they're better than another nationality, or one ethnicity thinks they're better than another ethnicity. So this false egos built up by identifying falsely with the body when we're not the body. And how do we know we're not the body? Because the body's always changing. If you say, I am this body, I could ask you, which body are you talking about? The one, that little fish that came to your mother's womb, or that little embryo in your mother, or that little baby that was pushed out of your mother, or the little boy that was 6 years old, or 16 years old, or 36 years old, or 66 years old. Which body are you talking about? They're all different bodies, right? In fact, we have that panel outside over there where the books are, showing all the different bodies that we go through. So which body are you then? Right? You're none of those bodies. Those are all temporary. But you are the soul that's conscious and is witnessing all the changes of the body. You know, sometimes people get to be like 30 years old and they say, "Oh my God, I got my first white hair here," and then they get to be 40 years old and say, "Oh my God, I got these big puffy things underneath my eye now," you know. And then they get to be 50 years old. "Oh my God, I got to get all my teeth. They're all rotten. I have to get them all pulled out, and I got to get a new set of teeth, artificial teeth. It only costs like me $20,000. You know, that's a deal." No, it's not a deal. You know, so oh my God, I got all these wrinkles. I got to get some Botox, right? Or I got to get plastic surgery. You know, they have these newscasters. And sometimes women, they're like, 70 years old, but they're still giving the news. But they stopped doing Botox, and they did plastic surgery. So whenever someone has plastic surgery, they're like this. So because their skin has been pulled back so many times, finally they have like that, because there's such tight skin now, and it's not real skin, it's plastic. So all this is artificial. It has nothing to do with who we actually are. We're the eternal servant of Krishna. That's who we are. That's our swarup, our real position. So here it's saying that there is a mystery of the generation of living entities. The so-called scientists, they're not scientists, they're rascals. They claim, everything is material. The body is made of matter, and if there's a soul, it's also a product of matter. And we'll discover all these things. We don't exactly know how it's working now, but we'll discover it. Look, we build bridges, and we build airplanes, and we have rockets, and we produce COVIDs, and we have also submarines. So we'll also figure out, how to make a human being simply with AI and IT, etc. This is a bunch of nonsense, right? But yet, the dummies believe it, and they spend billions of dollars wasting their money trying to do it. Just like Elon Musk said, "Well, I got some bad news for you guys. The Earth, it's not going to last very long. And the real future is going to Mars in the SpaceX, my SpaceX, and it's going to cost you a lot of money, but the Earth is finished. We've ruined the environment completely, and there's a very, very bleak future for humanity on this Earth. Therefore, we have to go on SpaceX to Mars." Yeah, Elon, you go first. Let's see if there's any Starbucks on the Mars. This all nonsense stuff. These people think they're experts. They're not experts. They're idiots. Just because they made a lot of money. And how did he make his money? Okay, he got most of his money from the government because he was going to make electric cars, right? But now let him compete with the Chinese and everybody else making electric cars. You'll see. It's not going to be so good because now he has to use his own money to compete with them. Okay, so we see here that there's a mystery of the generation of living entities. This impregnating process is performed by the first Purusha incarnation, Karanar Navasai Vishnu. Simply by his glance over material nature, the whole matter is accomplished. Well, we can't do something like that. We can't glance over something, all of a sudden, it comes alive. But Krishna has that power. Now, people who are pious and who actually chant Hare Krishna and hear Bhagavad Gita on a regular basis, they can understand this. But the meat eaters, the gamblers, the philanderers, the intoxicators, they can't understand anything. Like Elan, he's an intoxicator, and he's a woman chaser. He's got children with like 5 different women, and he only married maybe one of them. So what kind of a person is he? He's a low-class person. Not only him, Bill Gates. Everyone thought, oh, he's the best of all the billionaires because he's loyal to his wife. Well, wait a minute. We found out he was cheating on his wife for years. So these are all low-class people. They're not really to be looked up to because just because they have a lot of money doesn't mean that they're good people. And if you study the history of Microsoft, you'll see they were very mean to other companies. They purposely bankrupted other companies, right? And took almost a monopoly. Okay, so there's this mystery. Now, mystery means something that's very complicated. And not only is there a mystery, this is a transcendental mystery, because it's not covered by the darkness of material science, but it's a brilliant, spiritual, transcendental mystery. So how can we unravel this spiritual, divine, superhuman mystery that Krishna, simply by glancing, he can impregnate the material world with living entities. Those living entities are parts and parcels of him. We are all related very closely to Krishna, not only by being, let's say, an emanation from Krishna, but also Krishna is present in our heart as Paramatma. He's the closest person to us. Now, of course, the scientists say, well, this is all a bunch of hooey because we can't measure. You say Paramatma is there. When we do heart surgery, we don't see any Paramatma. We just see blood and veins and arteries and things like that. So what are you talking about? God is in your heart. Well, yes, he's in the heart, but you don't have the eyes to see. However, we have the eyes to see because we have faith in the words of Krishna. And Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, how do we prove all this? Well, if you look on our panel over there, 5,000 years ago, Krishna said, don't eat meat, don't gamble, don't engage in intoxication, and don't engage in illicit sex. But people do that today. Those 4 things are part of American culture, they're part of Indian culture, they're part of European culture, they're part of African culture, they're part of South American culture. It's become worldwide culture, meat eating, gambling, illicit sex, and intoxication. But look what happens when you do it. Look at all the statistics. Hundreds and millions of people are dying in this world every year because of these 4 things. No one is dying of giving up smoking. No one is dying of giving up illicit sex. No one is dying by giving up meat eating. No one is dying by giving up intoxication. But millions of people are dying every year by engaging in these 4 things. Therefore, what is the conclusion? Whatever Krishna said is true. That's the conclusion. And so there is validation that whatever Krishna says is actually true, and whatever the scientists say and the politicians say, it's a bunch of lies. And it puts people in misery. It doesn't help people. Just like Trump, his whole business was business. He'll win the election by improving the economy. Well, the economy was ruined by a little virus, and he was not reelected, you see. So he had a false premise. And then the scientists, they have so many false premises. And it just leads to havoc in the lives of people. So Prabhupada explains this in depth in a lecture on Bhagavad Gita, first chapter, 20th verse, in London, July 17, 1973. And that verse says, O king, at that time Arjuna, the son of Pandu, who was seated on his chariot, his flag marked with Hanuman, took up his bow and prepared to shoot his arrows, looking at the sons of Dhritarashtra. O king, Arjuna then spoke to Hrishikesha, Krishna, these words. Well, he told him, I'm not going to fight. And he said, I'm not going to fight because I don't see how I will be happy if I fight. Because both sides of this armies are relatives of mine. So either one side of my relatives will die or the other side of my relatives to die. So I cannot be happy. Therefore, I'm not going to fight. Well, what is this all about exactly? It's all about Arjuna being in a feverish frenzy of lamentation because he doesn't see how he's going to be happy. He's not thinking about Krishna here. He's only thinking about himself. See? So when people become selfish like that, they only think about themselves, they don't think about God, they make many, many mistakes. Just like one day I went to do a puja to a family in Kent. They invited me. And when I went there, when I was knocking on the door, I noticed that there was a little patch of recently shoveled earth, just like I also do. You know, at one point you have to sort of dig up the earth a little bit or plow the earth a little bit and get ready to plant, right? So I saw, wow, somebody must have done this, you know, and you know, you could see, you know, how they put the shovel at least 1 foot into the earth, and then brought it up, you know, and turned it over, right? So it was, you know, I could understand if someone was getting ready to plant a garden there, right? So I go in, and they asked me to come because it was the first Shraddh ceremony for their father or grandfather or husband, right? It was a family, and he was dead. And so I did the puja and everything, and then and quietly I asked one of the people there, I said, how did he die? And said, oh, well, he last week he dug up that little patch to plant it because he's a farmer in India, and he wanted to have a little garden here, you know. And that night he went to sleep and he never woke up. He had a heart attack. Now, he did that strenuous job, right? And it is strenuous to do that. Did he know he was going to die that night? No. He thought that he'd wake up the next morning and then straighten it out and plant it, see. But he died in his sleep. So you see how fragile the soul's existence in the ever-changing body is. This can happen to anybody, right? And I mean, when he was maybe 20 years younger, he could do that and nothing would happen to him. But he was in a very fragile state of health, and he overexerted himself, and he had a heart attack in his sleep and died, not knowing that he was going to die. Right? He had no way of knowing. He was tired, and maybe he had a little breathing problem because he worked so hard. He might have eaten something. That was his last dinner. He goes to sleep, and he's dead. So this shows how fragile our existence in the body is. So these are lessons. You can learn in 3 different ways. You can learn by hearing and understanding. That's called first class. Just like your father says to you, Sonny, don't smoke. You'll get cancer. So you say, okay, Dad, whatever you say, that's what I'm going to follow. Right? Or else someone else says to their son, Sonny, don't smoke, you'll get cancer. Oh, Dad, what do you mean cancer? How do you know? I know a lot of guys that smoke. They don't get cancer. They're okay. Why are you talking about? This is old-fashioned nonsense from you, Dad. So then, but yet, second class is you hear, but you don't follow. And then you see, then you follow. Right? So that's second class. But then there's third class. You hear, you don't follow. You see, you don't follow. You do. Then you understand, oh my God, I'm having difficulty breathing. I'm spitting up phlegm that's all looks like yellow and dark goo. And, every time I try and I take another puff, I have to cough like eight times, and so forth. It's like my father, he got to the point where every time he'd smoke a little bit, he'd be coughing for about 5 minutes, and making a horrible sound, and coughing, right? But yet he didn't stop smoking. So then, that's third class. But fourth class is you hear, you see, you do, and you don't stop. That is fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th class, right? And those type of people are actually suffering self-inflicted. It's not that somebody else is causing the suffering. They are self-destructive. And if you try and tell them, smoking is not good. What do you know, smoking? I know. My grandfather lived to be 105 years old, and he smoked every day. Well, that doesn't mean that you're going to be 105 years old by smoking. And by the way, the difference is his grandfather was regulated in his habits of eating meat and smoking. He would only smoke maybe 1 or 2 cigarettes a day, and he would only eat at designated times, like he would eat once in the morning, once in the afternoon, once in the late afternoon, and that was it, right? So he was regulated. Now, if you're very regulated, but you have some bad habits, you might live long anyway because you're regulated. Right? But if you're unregulated, you're always, eating a sandwich as you're walking down the street, or eating at 10 o'clock at night, and smoking and drinking and staying up late and waking up late, no, you're gonna definitely die young because of that irregularity. But if you're highly organized and regulated, even in your bad habits, and you're limiting your bad habits, you could live to be 100 years old, even though you might smoke 1 or 2 cigarettes a day. But when you overdo all these things and you're irregulated, you're going to die young. Irregulation is the cause of havoc in life, right? You're always doing catch-up rather than being prepared on time. So there's a saying, why are you going so fast? It would have been better to leave on time. So every time you're procrastinating, and then all of a sudden you realize, I have to do this thing, and you're like rushing. Haste makes waste. Haste makes waste. So better leave on time, then you don't have to rush, and better plan your day and be regulated in your habits, then you'll live longer and happier. But the purpose of life is not to live longer. The purpose of life is to always remember Krishna. So here Prabhupada says, there's a mystery. What does a mystery mean? It means something is very complicated. And therefore, Krishna tells Arjuna, 4th chapter, 3rd verse, he says, my dear Arjuna, I am speaking to you the mystery of Bhagavad Gita. It is a mystery. Mystery means very complicated. No ordinary man can understand. Therefore, it is called mystery. Rahasyam, that's the Sanskrit word for mystery. But not ordinary rahasyam. Uttama. Uttama rahasya means transcendental. Not covered with the darkness of material science, but it is brilliant. It is daivam, or divyam, or rahasyam. So daivam means it is spiritual, or it's like superhuman. Divyam means it's spiritual, and rahasyam means it's a mystery, right? and it's brilliant. So ordinary man cannot understand. Therefore, they interpret things foolishly. They speculate and demonstrate their rascaldom. That's all. Even big scholars. So they cannot understand because they are not devotee. It is meant for devotee, this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. The whole Bhagavad Gita is a transaction between God and his devotee. There is nothing more. Just like if you go to the market, like he's talking about the stock market, and two mercantile men are talking. So it should be understood that he is also a businessman. He is also a businessman. So they must be talking something about business. It is natural conclusion. Two businessmen are talking seriously. Not that they are discussing Bhagavad Gita. You cannot say that. They must be talking about business, something about profit. Just like all the businessmen, they assemble in the stock exchange, like the stock exchange. So there is howling, making all this noise, right? You ever see those pictures? You know, they're like shouting. You can see their veins coming out of their neck, right? They're shouting so loud, their face is red. You know, I'll buy it this price and this price. That's too expensive. No, I'll give you this. You know, they're going crazy, right? So that tumultuous sound means one businessman is talking. What is your rate? This is my rate. What is your rate? That's all. You cannot expect that at the stock exchange, the people gathered there, they're talking something about Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita. No. Prabhupada is very funny. Similarly, when there is talk between Supreme Lord Krishna and his devotees, so this whole talk is bhakti, nothing else. Bhakti means pure devotional service. They derive some meaning. Jnana, Jnanatmaka Vyakya. They describe on the understanding of the Jnanis, philosophical speculators. They are also candidate. Those who are Jnanis, actually, they are also interested to know what is Krishna. Jnani cha bharatarsabha, jigyasur arto artati, jigyasur jnani cha bharatarsabha. Bhagavad Gita 7:16. These four classes of men, provided their background is pious life. So you have four classes of men that may be interested in spiritual life. One is the person who is inquisitive. Another one is one who's looking for wealth. Another one is one who's suffering a lot. And the fourth one is one who really wants to know what the truth is. So they will come to Bhagavad Gita eventually and ask some questions. You know, what's this all about? I've studied this, I've studied that. Is this Bhagavad Gita different? Or is it the same old, you know? And so they'll come, you know, they're inquisitive, but they're looking for something. In other words, they still have a material desire, but they've come now to Bhagavad Gita to find out if Bhagavad Gita can satisfy them. Okay, so therefore it says, these four classes of men, provided their background is pious life. Impious life cannot inquire about God or can understand about God. We have several times repeated the verse, Yesam tvantakatam papam jananam punya karmanam de dvandva mohanir mukta bhajanti mam dhritarataha. Those persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life and are completely free of speculation and sinful activities, they come to me. Right? Those are the persons that come to Krishna, and they're very interested in knowing more about who is Krishna. So, but the other people, sinful people, the poppies, sinful men, they cannot understand. They understand only, they understand this way. They think, oh, Krishna is Bhagavan. I'm also Bhagavan. He's an ordinary man, maybe a little powerful, historically very famous man. So he is, after all, a man. So I am also a man. So why not I am God? This is the conclusion of the abhaktas, the non-devotees and sinful men. So whoever is eating meat, gambling, having illicit sex, and taking intoxication, they're never going to understand anything about Krishna. someone said, "Well, look, I'm not like that. I mean, okay, yeah, so every once in a while I have some extra sex, but all right, yeah, every once in a while I might eat a little bit of meat, but I'm not gluttonous. I'm not eating meat every day, Only when I go out to the hotel or to the restaurant, I might taste a little bit of meat, and yeah, a little wine, in vino veritas. Even the priests they say that, there's truth in wine, you know." And gambling, well, I go to maybe once every 5 years I go to Las Vegas. So I mean, I'm not like you guys. You guys are fanatics. I'm in the middle. Sometimes I go this way, and sometimes I go that way. My brother told me that once. He said, "You're a fanatic. I'm not a fanatic. I can go this way and that way a little bit. I gamble a little bit, and this, a little bit of this, a little bit of that." A little bit of this nonsense, a little bit of that nonsense. You add it all up, that's big nonsense, right? So this is the way people are. They'll always find ways of validating their nonsense. And they give you logical arguments. So that just shows how that is sophistry, false logic. Right? Okay, so. Papis, sinful men, they cannot understand. They understand only Krishna is Bhagavan, so I am also Bhagavan. He's ordinary man, I'm also ordinary man. So I can also become Bhagavan. So anyone who's declaring himself God, immediately you should know that he is the greatest sinful man. And if you study his private life, you will see that he is number one sinful man. So how many people came here to tell me, "Oh, you don't know that the present avatar in the world is our Guru, Nityananda. You have to come and see him. You have to come and see him, and he's the present avatar of God." And then all of a sudden this video comes out. He's having sex with some movie star, right, in the video. And they spread it all over the world, And then after some time he convinced the people that, "Oh no, that was not a real video. That was done artificially to malign my character." But then he left India and now is hiding somewhere in South America or some island off the coast of South America because the police are looking for him, because he didn't only have sex, he did other things too, and embezzlement, this thing and that. So we see exactly what Prabhupada says. He says, so anyone who is declaring himself God, immediately you should know that he is the greatest sinful man. And if you study his private life, you will see that he is number one sinful man. That is the test. This is a test. Otherwise, nobody will say that I am God. This is a false representation. Nobody. Any pious man will not do it. He knows, what am I? I am an ordinary human being. How can I claim to take the position of God? And they become famous. But these other people that declare themselves God, they become famous amongst the rascals. So if you accept a rascal to be God, that means you're also a rascal. Right? As it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, Savit Varahostra Karai, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, 3rd chapter, 19th verse. It says, Ustrakarai samstuta purusha pasu. In this world, we see there are many great men, so-called great men, and they are very much praised by the general people. So Bhagavata, or the Srimad Bhagavatam, says that anyone who is not a devotee, who never chants the Hare Krishna mantra, he may be a very great man in the estimation of rascals, but he is nothing but an animal. Svavit varaha ustrakarai. So how you can say such a great man is God? You are saying that the animal is God? Our business is a very thankless task. We say any man who is not a devotee, he's a rascal. We say generally. It is a very harsh word, but we have to use it. As soon as we see that he is not a devotee of Krishna, then he's a rascal. How do we say? He is not my enemy, but we have to say because it is stated by Krishna. Yeah, so we see this Nityananda, he was engaging in all kinds of illicit activities and claiming that he's God. In fact, if you went to his temple, I never went there, but I saw a picture of it. He had an altar with all different deities, right? But his picture was above all of them. Did you ever see that? Yeah. Yeah, and because he was the present avatar, right? So this is going on. It's not only him. There's so many other phonies in India, and it's in Christianity also. And it's also in Islam. Did you know that? They have the same thing in Islam, where someone declares to be the Mahdi. Mahdi means incarnation of God, and then he gets a lot of followers because he self-claims, right? And then it just causes havoc, and then they have to have a fight and kill all the Mahdis, right? And the same thing happens in Christianity. There was this one guy who was in Brazil, and people from all over the world, even from the United States, were going to see him because he was so-called a healer. He can heal all kinds of diseases. And he was instructing his people to always pray to Jesus. And they were actually praying to Jesus, but he wasn't. He was preying on young girls. So when you have the word P-R-E-Y and P-R-A-Y. So look up those two words. They're pronounced the same in English. So P-R-E-Y means that he's a molester. He was molesting young women that were coming to him looking for spiritual elevation, and he was saying, well, I have to prepare you for the spiritual realization, which meant he has to have sex with them. What's it say? P-R-E-Y.
An animal that is hunted and killed by another for food. It's the prey.
It's a prey.
Yeah.
And when you're praying, you're it's an animal. It's going around trying to kill other animals, right?
Yeah.
And then pray, P-R-A-Y.
There's also another continued meaning, another definition. A person or a thing easily injured or taken advantage of.
Right, pray. P-R-E-Y. But P-R-A-Y means a prayer, right? You're praying to God. So actually, these so-called rascal gods, they're praying, P-R-E-Y, on other people, making them victims of their sense gratification. It's not a P-R-A-Y, it's not a prayer to God, but they're treating them as praise. So see, that's why English can be a confusing language, because two words can be pronounced exactly the same, spelled differently, but pronounced the same, and have completely different meanings. So, Prabhupada says, if we are really Krishna conscious, then our business is to repeat the words of Krishna. That's all. What is the difference between Krishna's representative and non-representative of Krishna? The representative of Krishna will simply repeat what Krishna says. That's all. He becomes representative. It doesn't require much qualification. You simply repeat with firm conviction Krishna's words. As Krishna says, Sarvadharmam Parityaja Mam Ekam Saranam Braja, Bhagavad Gita 1866. So one who has accepted this fact, that if I surrender to Krishna, all my activities will be successful. He is Krishna's representative. That's all. You don't require to be very highly educated or advanced. If you simply accept that what Krishna says, that is the truth. Just like Arjuna said, Sarvam itam ritam manye tat yad tat vasi Keshava. Bhagavad Gita 10th chapter, 14th verse. My dear Krishna, Keshava, whatever you are saying, I accept it without any change. That is a bhakta. Right? Therefore, Arjuna is addressed, Bhaktosi me sakajeti rahasyam hitad uttamam. He is bhakta and sakka. He is a devotee and he's friend of Krishna. Therefore, he can understand the rahasyam, the mystery of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A bhakta knows that I am insignificant, a small spark of Krishna. Krishna is individual person. I am also individual person. But when we consider about his power and my power, I am most insignificant, and he is most powerful person, beyond anybody's understanding. This is understanding of Krishna. There is no difficulty. Simply one must be sincere, not sinful. But a sinful man cannot understand Krishna. The sinful man, he will say, oh, Krishna is also man. I am also man. Why? I am not God. He is simply God. No, I am also God. You are God, every God. Just like Vivekananda said, why are you searching for God? Don't you see so many gods are loitering in the street? Prabhupada said, you see? This is his God realization. This is his God realization. And he became a big man. Oh, he is seeing everyone as God. He must be a real guru. So, yeah, it's the Dravidya Narayana, the little God. Everybody loitering in the street is a God. This is nonsense. But of course, people love to hear nonsense. If they hear the truth, they say, oh, no, I don't accept that. But when they hear nonsense, oh, everybody is God. Yeah, oh, that must be true. You see, he's real guru. He said everybody is God. Let's all go and celebrate this in the bar. We're all God. We'll drink some beer and celebrate being God. Okay, so we'll stop right there. We're going to continue this tomorrow. This is an amazing lecture. All Prabhupada's lectures are amazing. But he's explaining the difference between a bhakta and a non-bhakta, right? A real devotee and all these pseudo so-called devotees. Haribol. Are there any questions?
No question, Maharaj, but I think that this particular statement where Prabhupada says the whole mystery is that the living entities are directly supplied by the Lord and they're never products of the material nature.
Say that again.
When the cosmic creation is manifested, the living entities are directly supplied by the Lord.
Yes.
They are never products of the material nature.
Right.
But this is the mystery. So, not.
Why is it a mystery? Because all these big scientists can't understand it.
Yeah.
They're saying everything is matter. There's no such thing as soul. There's no such thing as God. There's no spiritual world. We reject it. We can't measure it, therefore we reject it. Right? So these are big people. They got PhDs. They have so many degrees, and they're so famous. They're all stupid.
That's the illusion. So because of that, the entire purpose of life is lost.
Yeah. They waste their time thinking, oh, well, one day we will be God because our science will solve all problems, especially the problem of death. And we're on the cusp. By 2050, death will be optional. Right? Well, we'll have solved the riddle of death. It's a bunch of nonsense. Like post-dated check for $5 million. Right? You'll get it's payable in 2050. Would you accept it? No, he said. No, give me a $50 check, but I can put in the bank right away. I don't want a $5 million check that I have to put in the bank in 2050. It's all nonsense. It's all tricks, lies, and unfortunate that people believe such nonsense. Okay, we'll stop right there and continue tomorrow. So in the news yesterday, there's news about this pretty famous American, pastor or minister or so-called guru, Christian, and his church just suspended him for why? Because he was talking all the time on the phone on the internet with a church member's wife, right? And a friend of that lady who he was talking to complained about it to the church elders, and then they found out that he was talking on a daily basis with this woman, and they wanted to know, what they were discussing, So the minister said, well, it was nothing sexual, and we were just talking. But, why are you talking so much with some other man's wife? So very correctly, they suspended him for an indefinite period of time because they said this is not this is not the type of minister that we want. Right? Now, he can correct himself, right, if he wants to. But see, they're wising up now because so many Christian ministers have fallen down in the last 10 years. So many of them. And big guys, have like mega churches with, 5,000 or 10,000 people coming every Sunday to the church. So, and it makes them look really bad. It makes Christianity look really bad in the United States every time that happens. And the same thing in India. You have these big gurus that fall down, like Nityananda and so many others. So and even in ISKCON, we've had that problem. So it's very bad. Therefore, they have to be very strict and not accept any deviation, because otherwise it destroys people's faith. Okay, Haribol. All right, I'll sing. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Bando Mui Savadana Mate Bando Mui Savadana Mate Janara Prasade Bhai He Bhavatoriya Jai Krishna Bhakti Panya Hoite Krishna Bhakti Bhakti Hoya Hoite Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Koriya Kya Arana Koriya Mane Asa Arana Koriya Mane Asa Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttamagati. Ye prasade pure sarvasa. Ye prasade pure sarvasa. Shakshudana dila jaya janame janme prabhu se. Divya gyani de prakasita. Prema bhakti jahate avidya vinasajate. Prema bhakti jahate avidya vinasajate. Vedika janara charito. Vedika janara charito. Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu. Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu. Lokena Lokera Jivana. Lokena Lokera Jivana. Oh. Ha Prabhu Kura Doya Deha More Pada Jaya. Ha Prabhu Kura Doya Deha More Pada Jaya. Lokena Ebeya Susukti Bhuvana. Ebeya Susukti Bhuvana. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namani. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Pasyatyad Satarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavindam Jaya Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Bola Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Gaur Premanandi Ki Jai. Jayo Vishnupad Paramahansa Paramachika Shastatra Satyrashi Shishi Maharis Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Aho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Radha Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Ganga Maya Ki Jai Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to Samudra. All glories to Samudra. All glories to Samudra. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutri Samanta Bhakti Samanta Namaste Saraswati Devi Sesa Sunyavadi Paskati Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu. The lotus feet of our spiritual master, the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great honor. By his grace, one can cross the ocean and up
attachment.